Hi, everyone. Teresa Aker here from Success Diaries with Teresa Aker. It's my pleasure today to introduce you to Wendy McDowall. Hi, Wendy. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, thanks.
Good. I'm glad you're here. So, Wendy McDowell is the relationship nerd, relationship revitalization specialist at TRN Coaching and works as an executive assistant. So, let's come back to you, Wendy. Let's start where it all started.
Yeah, so I learned about relationships the hard way. I was in an abusive, toxic relationship for almost 20 years. And, I didn't know any better. I believed the narrative at the time. Unless you've been in that kind of relationship, it never makes any kind of sense. But the reality is that being in an abusive relationship actually affects your brain in much the same way that soldiers in battle get affected by PTSD. I did finally get out of there, and that's kind of a interesting story. So I had finally decided that I was done with this relationship, but I was really struggling because my ex at that time that I was still married to had decided that he wanted to go to counseling. And I had always promised him that I would go if he wanted to go because I begged and begged and begged for years and years trying to get him to go to some sort of couples counseling, and he wouldn't do it, of course. So now that I'm ready to go, he wants to go to counseling. And I had promised. So I don't take promises lightly. So I thought, well, I kind of have to go. So I went, and it went about as well as you can imagine. And on the way home from that day, I decided I just really don't want to do this, but I didn't know how to release myself from that promise. And so I was just so stressed out and so upset. And I just remember crying out, I need a sign that this is okay. And all of a sudden, like within seconds of saying that, and I said it out loud, on the right hand side of the road, there was this big plywood sign, hand painted, that somebody had made for their business. And it said, "We quit after 20 years." I was like, got it. So things did get better. It got a lot better, but I wasn't out of the woods yet. I was still really struggling. Life was hard. I lost my job during that process, which is a very long, boring story we won't go into. But I needed to get another job. I had 3 kids that I had to support on my own. And I took the first thing that came up, and it was kind of a strange and weird detour for me. I'd worked in HR most of my life, and this was working as a job coach for people with developmental disabilities, which actually was really inspiring and a lot of fun. And I'm still connected with a lot of those folks. But as part of that job, they wanted to send me to this weekend training, and I didn't absolutely have to go, it was optional. And the last thing I needed right then was to have to pay another babysitter. So I wasn't going to go. But for some reason, something in me said, I really need this job. I was beginning to learn how important the job was. And so I thought, I got to find a way. I got to go. I was trying to impress my boss. And so I just went. And that decision is where everything started to change. So I went to this training, and one of the things that they had us do is imagine if our life was a business, and they had us write a mission statement for ourselves. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was just kind of a cumulative sum of all of the experiences I've had. But what I wrote down that day was really pivotal for me. And it's been one of the driving factors in the success I've had in every area of my life. And this is what I wrote down. I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to get it wrong.
I'm looking for.
I believe I am defined by my choices. It is my responsibility to own the power that I have to shape my life so that I live with quality, impact, and meaning. My mission is to apply the power of choice to my own life in such a way as to bring about positive change and growth for myself and to provide encouragement and support to others to do the same. So I started living that way. And I'm glad that I did because 5 years later, I was on the verge of getting remarried. And things were going pretty well for me at that point. I had advanced in my career. I'd gotten back into HR. And like I said, I was about to get remarried, but something just didn't feel right. And so I listened to myself. That situation was not abusive. It wasn't super toxic like what I'd known before. So I kind of didn't really notice all the red flags and I didn't realize how much healing I still needed to do. So my partner at the time, he was really distant and aloof. And I didn't realize how much so. I mean, he just was really about being independent. And I thought, hey, that's great because I want to learn more about that. But I didn't realize the extreme that it went to until I had a medical emergency and my heart was just pounding. It was pounding. So my heart was just pounding and I was just completely terrified. So I went to him and I was telling him, hey, I'm really freaked out. This is scaring me and I think I might need to go to the hospital. And he kind of shrugged it off and he just kind of looked at me like, oh, it's probably nothing. Just, let me know if it gets worse. It hit me later, not in that moment, but it hit me later that I didn't have any clue, even then, after all of that, that I could just say, I want to go to the hospital. Take me, please. Or even call an Uber and just go. So I still had a lot of growing up to do. And part of that was realizing that even though this relationship was a lot better, it still wasn't what I wanted. What I dreamed of, what I longed for was someone who really, really wanted to know me on a deep level, somebody that wanted a very powerful, almost spiritual connection with me. This was definitely not that, right? He was a guy that things to be easy and uncomplicated and simple, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I definitely wasn't what he wanted, really. It was getting bad. I was crying every day. I felt damaged and broken because I'd escaped this horrible 20-year relationship and I thought I was all better and I wasn't. So I wanted to give up. But I remember that sign and I remembered that class, that mission statement. I was like, hey, hold up a second. I get to choose. This is not my fate. This is not something I'm stuck with forever. I just need to choose differently. And let me tell you, it's hard. It's hard to end a relationship. I think I would rather be broken up with than break up with somebody.
It's not an easy task, is it?
Yeah. So I chose me. I invested in myself. I got therapy. I started really investing in what does it take to make a really good relationship. I was like, enough already. I want what I want and I need to figure out how to get it. And if I want that, the only person that's going to make it happen is this girl, right? So I started taking classes, I read books, and I started working with a relationship coach. So, one of the things that was recommended to me in my trainings was that I just take some time away and just really sit with myself and get real with myself and own my own role in what was happening. That was really scary for me after being in that abusive relationship where everything was my fault. Owning my stuff was like, oh, but I don't want to. But I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I ran away from home and I spent a weekend away. And I just sat there and I thought and I thought and I thought and I journaled and I sang and I meditated and I hugged myself and I yelled. I did all the things. And I really, that's when it got crystal clear to me that this relationship was not it. And so I decided to end it. And I continued my growth. And then because everything started to change after that, everything got better. I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to help other people do this. I brought me back to that mission statement again. Okay, this is great. I'm figuring this out finally. Had the idea a while ago, but it took me a while to actually put it in action. And I want to help other people do that and maybe not have to take quite as long.
Exactly.
So that's what I've been doing ever since. I went back to the training and I got even more education so that I could be a relationship coach myself.
Sure.
And in the process, I wasn't looking, I was focused on doing my business. I was focused on making this happen. I was focused on putting out some really good stuff into the world. And lo and behold, without me even wanting to have anything to do with the relationship at this point because I was healing, right? The man who's now my husband, Rob, came into my life. He just kind of appeared. And at first I was like, no, thank you. No, I'm good.
Because you're
Working on
really
me over
well.
here. And one of the things that I learned, and I'm glad that he was persistent, and I'm glad that I finally let him in because one of the things I learned that I needed to learn and it impacted my coaching is that you can actually heal better and faster in a relationship than out of it, as long as you're both invested and you're both on board.
Yeah.
And so we did that. He had his own attachment issues, he had his own struggles, and we just grew through them together. So, just like I said, from that one decision, and then kind of finally seeing it through, everything changed. Everything in my life is different. I'm not working in HR anymore. I was working at a very high corporate level, and I got to tell you, I hated it. It was not what I got into HR for. I got into HR to help people. And at that level, it's about protecting the company. You get to help people a little bit, but mostly it's about protecting the company. And that just wasn't where my heart was. So I got to leave all that. I got to create a business that I love. I have been doing it ever since. It's really going well. I get to travel. I can work from anywhere. I get to work with people who inspire me. I've partnered with a lot of folks to do joint ventures in relationship space. Rob and I actually went to Scotland to get married because why not? Like, really, for no reason except because we wanted to.
Yeah.
Now I even get to come on podcasts and tell my story. So, yeah, everything's great. I don't call it happily ever after. That's not what I got. I got everything ever after
That's
because the reality is we have to be ourselves. We have to be real. We can't just look at the shiny bits, but I get to be all of me and I don't have to put on a show and I absolutely love it. So
so.
that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, no, Wendy, you had quite the journey. And what I took from that is the most important is we have to be individuals in our own lives. We have to respect ourselves first. The other person has to be individual in their life and respect themselves. You can come together and you can be united, but you need to do that with your own individuality, your own personality, your own needs and wants, and respect each other so that when you do hit those bumps along the way, as they call them, you're able to discuss it and be respectful of each other's needs and responsibilities in the relationship. And you said it, both have to be willing and able to keep going together because you're right. I've been divorced a few times. So just so you know, Wendy, not new to breakups. But I did
Yeah.
find my husband the third time around, and he was amazing. He's not with me anymore. He's passed away, but I had a tremendously wonderful marriage. But I matured before I met him. I grew before I met him. I learned me before I met him. He already was a confident man. So by the time I caught up to him, I was ready to have a grown-up relationship, if you will. And I knew I was in for, not the fairy tale marriage anymore. I was in for some bumps and bruises, but together I knew he was willing to do it with me. So Wendy, kudos to you because that's exactly what people need to hear. Now, if I was to ask you, three tips that you could give today to people going through relationships or perhaps not sure if they want to go further, what would be your tips?
Number one, be yourself, period. Full stop. The biggest mistake I think people make is trying to mold themselves to what the other person wants. That's never going to work out well. Even if it seems like it's going really well, it's based on a facade and it's going to crack at some point. So be yourself. If they can't love you for who you are, they're not your person. And the second thing I would say is check your assumptions. I think that was the biggest challenge for me to overcome. I had so many assumptions about what my husband is thinking, what he's feeling, what his utterances mean, and a lot of those were coming from all of my background of trauma and had
Exactly.
nothing. So I had to learn how to question myself, not in the sense that I doubt my intuition, but in the sense that I'm always fact checking any knee jerk responses that I have,
Sure.
whether with him or with myself or whatever I got to do to make sure, like, is that really true? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is. Oh, no, that isn't. No. And then the third thing I would say is just be curious, be curious. The more you want to understand your partner, yourself, what's going on around you, the more open you are to ideas that are different than your own, at least to understand them. You don't have to agree with them, but you can hear them and validate that, hey, I get why you feel that way, right? I mean, being curious, it has been a game changer. And that's one of the things that I learned from my coach. Curiosity is king. So that's kind of, I think, the three big things: be yourself, check your assumptions, and be curious.
Perfect. Wendy, perfect. Now, if someone wanted to reach out to you right away, what's the best place to get?
Mhm. You can just email me. It's just Wendy at therelationshipnerd.com. But I'm on all the socials as the relationship nerd. I try to keep it very simple and streamlined. Look on Facebook, look on LinkedIn, look on Instagram, wherever you want to go. I'm there as the relationship nerd, so you can message that way. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
And you have a podcast you mentioned.
Not yet. It's something
You're
I'm
good.
working. I
Oh, you're
do
working.
workshops.
So Wendy, would you come back and talk to us again?
Oh, absolutely.
You've been wonderful. Honestly, thank you for sharing your journey. And we have so much more we want to ask you. So if you would come back, that would be great. Thank you. Everybody, this was Wendy McDowall. She has all kinds of information for you as a relationship coach. I'm going to make sure all her information is available to you, and reach out to her anytime you like, because we will have her back. My name's Teresa Aker. I hope you'll subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate all you viewers. Thank you, Wendy, again. I look forward to talking to you all very soon. Bye-bye now.